Okay, so all the parts have arrived. The first thing to do is open them all up. So we've got a case we can do in a second. We'll start with the big box of goodies. So just find yourself a big area to work on. I'm just on the kitchen table, so you just got plenty of space. And then just get rid of all the packaging. And then I guess first thing to do is make sure you've got everything you ordered. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 11 items, but we have 1, 2, 3 things on there are just game codes. So we've got processor, nice i7 6900K, or 6900K. Got the SSD, which one did I buy? 1 terabyte. I've got the RAM, a big fan cooler, big power supply, that's a big heavy thing, motherboard, and graphics card. And you can see why we need a lot of room, so get all that out of the way. And then place all this here. And we'll do the same, we'll just get this case opened and out of the way. Ooh, you get a big static shock as well usually off the cases, so you probably heard that on the camera, a big click. And then one thing to be careful of when you're building computers is really should be anti-static safe, or rather static safe, so you don't give that kind of bolt to the electronics. But all I've done, I've built hundreds of machines. I basically touch this case before I start working, and generally you're clear of static then. So we'll start with the case, because this is, well, not necessarily the case, but we'll start with this after we've put the cooler on the motherboard. So I'll see most cases these days, if I can zoom in on that, they come with these sort of easy finger adjustable screws. And then if not, you've got the head of the screw where you can just use a screwdriver. I can get that there. Actually, I don't know what I'm doing. There you go. So you can just use a normal screwdriver if not. So you just remove the two with your finger, and then you can take off the case. Come on a little bit. And then depending on what side you've got, you tend to want to open. So if it's facing you like this, then you want to open the left side here. If you take off the other side, you'll just face all this back face. So you should basically be able to put your hand into the case, and then you know you've got the right side. So we'll come to do the case in a moment. For now, we'll just move that out of the way, and we'll start with the motherboard. So get all this lot out, get down to motherboard, and then the first thing you want to do is, which you sometimes forget, is to make sure you install the CPU cooler. So let's also get that ready. So you want to make sure you put this on, because there's a piece you'll see that has to go on the back of the motherboard, and if you install this motherboard into the case, then build the whole thing up, and then you get to the CPU and you realise you haven't got the fan attachment on the back. So again, I'll just get rid of all packaging. So this is you'll get the back plate that will go on the case in a minute, specific to the motherboard, so we'll put that on one side. I don't need the these little jumpers for, oh sorry, not in the camera. These little jumpers for the motherboard, CD, guide on, fan cooling, big main instruction manual. I tend to not use any of this. Just move it all out of the case, then get the packaging out of the way. You can always get the packaging back if you need to, but I like to keep everything as clean as possible. So let's start with this. So we have, get into a good working position first. So I want to be around there, I'd say. So we've got the motherboard and we'll need to do the CPU. Before we do that, sometimes you'll find at the back here, this big block, is where you need a cooling fan attachment. So we'll open up the fan cooler first. And that's really all there is to it. So we've got the fan cooler, doing this all off camera at the minute. So we've got the actual cooler that come out of the box, and then we've got a fan, and then an instruction guide. And what else do we have? These will be the back plates. So these are all the plates. This is what you need to attach. So again, we'll get these down here. That's that case empty, out of the way. And we need to remember what CPU socket we had. So we've got on the CPU LGA 2011. So in the manual to the CPU cooler, there should be a page somewhere, and you can see, face it up, you've got LGA 1150, and here's the one we want, LGA 211. So it says to affix the chipping system, installation of the mounting bracket, screw the LGA 2011 studs number 8. We figure these studs have got to go on the front, so let's pull out this arm first, which pushes in. Let's zoom out a little bit. And those lift out of the way. This comes out ready for the CPU. So this cover plate just cracks out. And there's all the pins to the CPU that you don't want to really be touching. So we're down to what looks like on this motherboard. There we go. So we have those there as like spacing studs. And we've also got these in the kit. So we want to make sure these go on. So these will usually space between two studs, and they'll usually go through. So if you take a look at the picture here now, you can see this bit here that goes across and then up and down, and you've got like an angle there, is basically this bracket facing, you know, that way in the picture. So we know this wants to go there, and then the other one goes there. So we can gather that now just from basically looking at what we're doing here, looking at the picture and seeing, and it looks like the studs go in first. So these studs go in first, this sits on top, and then these screws go afterwards. So it looks like we're on the right track. So if we screw these down just finger tight for now, get out of the way. And then this one, and this is probably the only fiddly part of the thing you have to solve in the whole build really. Everything else is straightforward. I'd say installing the modern CPU fans is the trickiest part. It also looks like this plate, backing plate, isn't used. So typically they are, the last build I did was, but you can see on this diagram this is for the LGA 1150 and it clearly shows the bracket going underneath, whereas our picture has no bracket, so luckily we don't have to fit this bracket underneath, which we usually do. So that's why it was a little bit confusing at the start, because I usually install these. So that's out the way. we've got the 4 studs on. So now I'm guessing, let's click them back in a minute. This one will go there. And this one here. And screw this down just loosely. And that's it. So that's the CPU fan cooler block installed in terms of the supports for it. So again, looking at this, that looks like all we have to do. It's just got those brackets on, and then I guess the next step is to simply mount this through, and it looks like there's this bar, which will be this bar, is sort of cutting through the fan, but we'll get to that when we install the fan. So again, don't worry too much about trying to figure it all out until you get to the stage, and a lot of it is doing just by, you know, seeing firsthand. So let's move these bits out the way again. So now when you come to install the motherboard into the case, we'll first want to get all these cables out of the way, and then you'll usually get a bag of screws and a speaker sometimes for the motherboard, which is the beep sound when you turn it on. This is a spare grill for the back here, for where the graphics card goes, in case you don't do that, in case you're using an onboard graphics. And then some screws for the motherboard, which we'll make use of now. So again, all the junk out of the way. This is the fan. So some cases come with a fan already, and then it's expecting us to either connect it up via a 3-pin power from the motherboard typically, or just directly from the power supply to run all the time. So we're just going to connect it to the power supply to run all the time, because it's just a basic case fan. But move that out of the way, get all these cables, move them out of the way for now. And then what you'll find is, when you come to install into this case, you'll see, if I can get this angled correctly, and this moved into focus. Where are we? There we go. Oh, there. So you've got these spacing studs, and typically they're set up correctly. So if we then look at the motherboard, you can see various mounting holes. So there's one here, and there's one here, and there's one down here, and one here. So you've got mounting holes all around. So if you place this in and keep an eye on those mounting holes, and this is just for figuring out where we need to place the there. So this one's got the power hole at the top. Some cases have power holes at the bottom, and some have the powers at the top. So we'll put the power in a moment, just before the motherboard, but we'll get all the connectors in and ready. So looking at this, you basically look through the holes, and I can see already that we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4, 5, 6 of them lined up, and the extremities, so these ones on the outer edge don't have any support behind them, so if you push down, the motherboard could technically touch the bottom, but we've got supports right the way up to here. So if I move this out of the way, you can see that it was resting on this support here, and so all these already match this motherboard's mounting holes. You can then go further and install the mounting holes into, say, these here. So if you get the bag that was inside the motherboard and you empty out the screws, you'll see that you've got a few additional. You've got 3 more mounting screws. So you can just go ahead and screw those 3 into position. You can go there and basically screw it in, and then just do the same for the other 3. And now, before we then place this in and screw it down, we'll do 2 more things. we will install the power supply to get that out of the way because it's quite heavy, we don't want to hit the motherboard. And then, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and then we'll install this that we had in the case. So we can do this one now because this is nice and easy. So this is the back plate. It's basically this hole here, you can't really mistake it. This wants to go behind and pushed into this hole. And if you're wondering which way it goes, simply get your motherboard, which will only fit in the case one way, and you can see this has to go to match this hole here. The motherboard has to go in this way. You can see this, your audio sockets here, and your PS2 and USB at the top. So then if you get the adapter plate, you can see these have got to go at the bottom, these at the top. So it goes in this way, you go in from the bottom, and basically line it up, and just push it in. And it's just a push fit, and that's it, and it's in. And then the motherboard will push against this as well and keep it in place. So let's open this thing up. Again, nice manual, out of the way. Packaging, let's get down to the actual power supply. So you can see here, these are the modular connectors. So normal power supplies come, and all the cables are coming out here, no matter if you want to use them or not, you'll have every single cable attached. The slightly more expensive ones like this one come with a lovely little bag and all the cables in. So get all this out of the way. Now we have this power supply, and then in the bag we have all the module cables. We've got a EU power supply, even though I'm in the UK. And that's it. So I need a UK power supply. Lucky I've got plenty of them. So then, couldn't really be any simpler. The back face of the case here wants to have obviously the power cable bit coming out, so that goes that way. And then up or down, it tends to go with the logo facing up to the top of the case. Drop it in. Now we can see the screw holes are just about lining up. So we've got one up here, it's a little bit hard to see, but yeah, the screw holes are lining up there and there. So now all you need to do is screw the screws in, but that's now got the power supply in. We've now got the back face in as well, so we've got this back plate in. So now it's time to install the motherboard. So grab the motherboard back, and hopefully this is going to be light enough now without the lighting, the decent studio lighting. So we've got this in, and again you'll place the motherboard onto those supports, and you'll also be looking for, at the back here, you can now see this is the motherboard coming up to all these, so it's aligned. So what you want to do is you want to get the motherboard screws, which are the screws with the sort of like the washer already on the screw, like there. You want to get your screwdriver, you want to get the screw over the first hole, so over the top, usually go for the top left mounting hole there, and then push the board in, and then with it in, it should find the screw hole nice and easy. And then tighten that one down. And then now, again, if I can get this in the shot, you'll see we have the screw hole there nicely lined up with the screw centre to it. So that's the first one in. And then what I'd typically do is pick now the screw at the other extreme. So we did the screw up here, we'll now do the screw down this bottom corner. So we'll go for this one right down here. And we might be able to get in on that. So we've got this screw right down here. Down there. And you can see that one's slightly out of line as well. So same principle, get your screw over the hole, and this is actually not far off, this should find its way in. and tighten down. Don't over tighten these screws because you don't want to break the motherboard. They're only there to keep the motherboard in place, so you don't need to go crazy with how tight you're making these screws. So with that done, now make sure you screw in all the other holes that you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish all these screws, and you can just fast forward the video. So let's go ahead and install the CPU next. So we've got the mounting brackets already on ready. And what we want to do now is we'll have these springs either side of the CPU, which are a little bit difficult to get. Now I'm hoping these aren't going to be in the way. So it just about lifts through them, which is a little bit concerning because that's not usually interfering that much. So you lift these two prongs out by basically just pushing inwards on the prongs, and then this cage lifts up. So this moves out of the way, and this cage lifts up. So let's open the CPU, and you want to be careful here because the CPU is quite expensive. It's usually one of the most expensive parts of the computer. We can get that on camera. And if I can get the light just right, you can see there Intel Core i7 i7-6900K. So there we go. You'll also notice on the CPU you've got this indicator here, this arrow. Each corner piece, each plastic like this bit here, is square. So you can see all three corners there, square, square, square. This one's got a little notch cut out at the top corner. So if I zoom right in, that little notch there that's cut out. So that's the indicator that matches the CPU arrow. So you want to take the CPU, you don't want to touch the underside here, don't get touching any of this. Keep your fingers on the edge. Notice the arrow up here and place that so it's pointing on the arrow, and all you do is gently place the CPU down into position and just make sure it's lined up, and then you can see to check it's lined up, you'll see it's dropped into position. So you'll see it's gone right down into the corners. So that's what you want to see. And then with that in, you want to take these arms, or rather you want to fold this back over first, and this is the thing that's going to push down on the CPU and keep it in place. And then you want to fold these arms back into position, which lock in down there, and this one locks in down there. So we've now got that locked in solid, that's not going to go anywhere. You can see on this case we have these four slots, these four slots, and these are the RAM slots. If you get the motherboard manual, so you just grab the manual that comes with the motherboard. Typically you'll find fairly easily, or usually near the start of the manual, try and keep it that way, and I guess memory there, so EN14. So we go to page 14, and you can see there memory. And you can also see DIM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you notice how the 5, 6, 7, 8 go backwards. And what you're also looking for is, typically when you buy the RAM, as I mentioned, don't buy individual sticks, buy them in sets because they've been balanced. So these are 2 sticks, we've got 2 times 16 gig. So we want to install 2 memories, and you can see here channels A, B, C and D. So you want to keep these in pairs, so you'd marry 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. And well, let's double check that actually. So no, rather here's the suggested installation for the 2, and this is why I was highlighting this. You might expect to install your memory just here. So, you know, just pick 2 and install them in 2. And it'll still work that way. But the way the motherboard's been optimized, and the way the high-speed channel's been done is that if you've got 2, they recommend installing it in 1 and 5 to pair up. If you've got 3, it's 1, 5 and 3. So the manual will tell you which are the desired channels. So we're going to use 1 and 5. So we'll get the RAM and we'll open this up. And that's a really nice looking RAM. So these are keyed. So if we take 1, you'll see you've got your notch here. Now this notch is slightly shorter one side, so it's here is less than, come on camera, focus. There we go. So this side's slightly shorter than this side, so it'll only fit in one way. So when you come to install the RAM in slot 1, which is here, you'll see that you have the notch here. So when we install it, you push back on this tab. So there's tabs here, you just push them back. You can do that for all of them, it doesn't matter. So only one side has pushable tabs, and then you can simply try. You can either look with your eye and see that you know, that's going to fit that way, because you can visibly see. If you try the other way, you'll see that it doesn't quite line up with the notch. So if I tried to install it the wrong way, basically it won't go in, and you can try and get it in, but you can see that that notch is not aligned. So the notch is there, it's just slightly out of line. So you have to turn it around, and then you see the notch is going to line up there, so you know that's going to go in. So that's the way it's going to go round. The side that you pushed this flat back on tends to be the side that you don't start at. So you start with the memory at the other side, you push the memory in, so it goes down like that and you feel it go down, and then this side goes in, but you don't want to push too far. So it starts at this end, and then you try and get them in evenly, and then push down at this end, and push down at this end, and you should hear it click. So you hear that click, and that's that latch at the back locking in. That's the noise of that going. So that's what you're listening for, and then you know the RAM's in good. Same for the other one, which if you remember was this outer one. So we just grab the other memory stick, pick the side that matches, which is that side, slide it in there, go the other side and then push down. You can hear that clicking as well as the motherboard settling in on the mounting screws. That was just a bit of movement on the screws there. So that's the RAM in. So we've now got CPU and RAM. Just do a bit of cleanup. So let's first install the fan. So you'll notice the bottom of the fan there's this grease with this cover on that just fell off, and this is thermal paste. So you absolutely must have thermal paste on the CPU, and that comes pre-installed on this cooler. So that's that white gunk there. So with the CPU in place and following again the little instruction that come with the cooler, you can see the picture shows the CPU fan with a bracket going over and 2 screws. So it's fairly easy to figure out that it's this bracket that come with it and these 2 screws. Again, just look at the pictures and figure out based on the pictures. So this, we know the fan as a whole will want, we know the fan is going to be facing here, you know, well, this way generally. So we know we don't want it that way, because then the air would be blowing up and down the case, whereas the vent of the case is outwards here. So you install it this way, plus the other telltale sign is, if you look at this case, the groove here, where the mounting bracket's going over, has to line up with these 2 holes where it's going to mount. So if we installed it that way, the bracket would go over here, say like that, and it wouldn't attach to anything. So it has to be that way. So let's go ahead and install it that way. Let's first place this gently, because you've got to place this right because of this thermal paste. You've got to make sure when you contact it's going to touch the CPU. So place that over the CPU so it lands on the CPU, and then it'll slide a bit because of the thermal paste. And then you want to slide this mounting bracket through and line it up with the holes, and then everything should sort of lock into place. So you can feel that's all locked, and there's a good view. So that's all like nicely locked in place now. Obviously we haven't screwed it down, but everything's lined up. So we'll take the screw, and because this is going either side of the CPU, we'll put this screw in, get it started off, but don't over tighten, simply just until it starts moving. And then we'll go to the other side and we'll do this screw. And then you can tighten down until you just see the bridge moving, then go to the other side and just tighten gently each time. A few more turns that side, a few more turns that side. These clearly hook in like this. They sit in the fan and they definitely hook in like that. So we'll get both of them, and you'll take the bracket and basically just hook it in to the holes. Now you've got sort of you can get a hold of that, and you can tell that's obviously in some way right. Then if we just place this down, and I notice the side here, and I think I remember now, this is how the last one worked, very similar. You can see we're very close to the grills. So we're very close to sort of this line here, which got me thinking. And you can also see the bars slipping through the grill. So all I did was sort of pulled on this like a spring. And then you can see it's now latched in, sort of locked inside the grills. And that's now latched in. So you pull out and it comes out, and you push and it sort of locks in. So that's how they work. That took about 10 minutes to figure out. And then do the same the other side. Just simply pull it into place. And there we go, one very complicated CPU cooler. And now we want to plug this end of the fan in. This is also really important. You've got to make sure you plug this into the motherboard, where there's usually only one spot and it usually says CPU fan. So if I tilt this up and get to there, you can see, hopefully, if I can get to the right spot. And when the camera focuses, you can see it says CPU fan 1. So you want to take the fan and plug it in, and it will usually only fit in one way as well. So let's just place that in. So basically try to fit it in one way. If it doesn't work, push it in the other way. So there's the CPU fan installed. So that's that. You'll also see next to that was sys fan. So we could go ahead and install this fan here with this connector to sys fan. You could plug it in down there, and that will act as a system fan, and it just means that the motherboard, the BIOS, will have some kind of feedback based on the fact that it knows that this is a fan for the system. You can get some control over it and some feedback. I'm just going to place these wires sort of anywhere for the moment. And now we get the graphics card. So we got the GTX 1060 here, so not top of the range but not far off. Let's take a look at this. So we've got a box full of manuals, which again I never read. Got a big manual, and what is this, a poster? So we've got a giant poster with this CPU. It is Arm Yourself, so I'll have to zoom out even more for that. It's a big poster. So I don't need that. That can go with all the other boxes. And on to the good stuff. So, and again, when you're messing with parts, just keep touching this case to get rid of any static when you've messed with casing, just to get rid of any static on your fingers. It also comes in an anti-static bag. And there we have, that's a nice graphics card. So we've got all plastic seal over. And there we go. It's a double width or a double depth, I'm not sure what you class them as. GPU, so it takes up 2 slots in the motherboard. Got a DVI, and the modern ones come with these covers again now. So sort of to protect from dust, all the ones you're not going to use. You pull these out and there's a display port. And you keep those in when you're not using them. And that looks like another, that's a HDMI. So 1 display port, 1 HDMI so far. Another display port, so 2 display port, 1 HDMI. So we've got 3 display ports and 1 HDMI, which is cool, because display port's the more modern connector anyway. So move that out of the way. And then in terms of installation now, the graphics card goes in. Typically you try and fit it in your top PCI slot, if not you can go the one below. So these are your PCIs, that's a full-size PCI, and the little one, I'm trying to move my hand out of the way here, these little ones are still PCIe, they're just the smaller slots, they're express, can't think of the names, I think there's like 32 and 16, and there's 4-speed, 8-speed, but typically your fastest are at the top and they're written on the motherboard. So we want to install the graphics card there. As we showed, this is a double depth, so in terms of the back of the case now, we're going to need another one removed. Before we move these out, because they tend to be single time removal, the sort of, you just bend and twist the metal out, and once they're out, they're out. So we will try and get a good angle of this again to see what I'm talking about, but you want to kind of take your graphics card and try and place it in to position. So you'll be looking for lining up this connector, which has also got a guard on that we have to take off. So you're looking at lining this connector up with this connector, and then seeing where this face sticks out here. So if I line that up roughly there, so that's lined up with the connector down there, just roughly, but that will give you a visible indication. If I keep this still and turn around to the camera, you can then see, if I lift this up, it's over here. You can see it's falling on these 2 slots. So this one we want to reinstall, and hence why we had the spare bracket at the start somewhere over here. So we've got this bracket spare, so we'll reinstall that one, move the graphics card out of the way, and now we need to remove these 2. So these tend to just twist out like this. You just literally pretty much snap the metal out, and they're just attached with little tiny nibs. So I can get one on camera, sort of here. You just see the little nib that's broke. So there's just a few tacks of metal that keep those in. So again, you just take it, sort of push, and just rotate back and forward, and they tend to sort of snap out fairly easy. So just really wriggle them about. With those out now, again, the cases are all different, but you see at the back here, this has got a guard over all ports. So we want to remove these 2 screws and get to this port. So see if I can keep that in camera. Remove these 2 screws, and then this bracket comes off. Place that to one side for the minute. grab the graphics card again and place it in. And now what you should find is if you line up the connector, you should find it basically slides into place. And then you can push down again, similar to the RAM. This has also got a clicking latch, so if you push you should hear a click. And there you hear more like a crack there, but that was the click. And now the graphics card is in place. So we're going to get the spare cover that come with the case. We're going to install that by going from behind down and just sort of resting it there. So that covers that hole that's not used. Take the plate that we took off and line that back up. Cover all them holes. And the point of these plates is so you don't have to put screws in individual holes. You can just cover the whole lot like this and then screw it in to retain them all. So just reinstall this bracket. So that's that. Now we need to get power to the graphics card and generally power to everything. So there's one last thing to install before we can connect all the power, and that is the hard drive. So this is a nice and simple one. So again, we'll just open this up. Let's just rip the case open. There's the hard drive, nice and super light. Manual book, all stuff to go again. And this is like almost all modern hard drives you should get. This is a SATA drive in terms of connection. So you've got your power input here and your SATA cable here. So your power supply should have come in all those bags we mentioned, or if not, your motherboard should come with a SATA cable, and they look like this. And you've got one with an angle and one with a flat. Typically the angle will go in the motherboard because they're all in different places, but you can look in your motherboard manual. But you can see just about down in the bottom corner of my motherboard. And again, look in your manual if you're not sure, but I know they're typically always there, so that's where I looked. And that's why your cable's got an angle, because then you have, let's just get the angle back again. You can take the angled cable and you can plug it in. So there's like a click, and it won't pull out once it's in. It won't pull out. So I've now got a connection to a SATA cable, and I'm going to zoom back out. Then we get the hard drive, and this cable will only go in one way again. So if you want to look carefully, you can actually look at the connector and see the AL, and then you could look on the hard drive and see the AL as well. So you'd know it goes that way. And clicks on. So that's the hard drive in. The other one is power, so we haven't got power to anything yet. We haven't positioned anything, so I'll just leave that out of the way for the moment. And now really we're getting around to installing power in the system. But right before we do that, we will now connect all this bundle of cables, which you might think looks scary, but this is really easy. So start with the big ones. Again, most of these are the same. And you can see you've got a big cable. This I believe is USB-C. And just take a look on your motherboard. Again, you could look in your manual or just look on your motherboard, and I can see straight away. So down here I can see that red one there. If I zoom in, maybe you can see. There we go. So we have JUSB 1. So that is the connection we want. And that's that blue one in. So these big cables, one has HD audio. So again, on your board you should only have one connector where this fits, and you can see there's a distinctive second pin missing. And usually they're down the bottom corner, so they're usually down here. Again, all boards are different. I'm just going to take a look at mine. And yeah, mine's at the bottom corner, right down here. So I'll try and get this in view again. If I come to the bottom corner and you can see, not quite yet, right down there, where it says J Audio, down there, just by the Made in China. And you can see that distinctive second pin that's missing. So I'm just going to plug mine in there. That's the audio one in. And then we've got this one left, which says USB. Again, distinctive single pin missing at the top. Look on the board, exactly the same principle, usually down the bottom, and I can see them already. So they are down here, these two here. Again, I'll zoom in. And you can see it says USB 3, USB 4. And you've also got more SATA, you'll notice. So you could have connected your hard drive SATA connector here in these two, as well as, you know, the other SATAs there. And that's those cables in. And now finally all these. And what you'll find on these cables is you have hard drive light, plus and minus. You have reset switch, power switch, and then two separate, which is power LED. So these are all in one place. Again, you'll look on your board, and this is where you can usually refer to the manual to find these, you know, these specific pins. You can look around, but I'll show you how to use the manual to find them as well. And really, it should just be on the first few pages of the manual. So I tend to just flick to the start, and you'll know what you're looking for because you'll see a bunch of jumpers. So, and you can probably guess from this page that if you hover over, it shows all the main parts. So you can see we've got SATA here, which we plugged in. We've got the CPU there, which we plugged in, the CPU fan up here, which we installed. We've got the audio down there, which we installed. We've got the PCIe slot. So again, you can refer to your manual if you like. So all we want to look for, you can read this and just try and find. But honestly, I tend to find, just flick through, and within a page or so, you should come to a diagram. You know, this is showing you how to install the CPU that we've already done, the heatsink that we've done, the memory, and this is kind of the order you're building anyway. And then it's showing you mounting the holes, which we've done. And then here we go. So when you start getting to things like this, these are the power connectors you need, which we'll do after. This is the slots that we've done for the graphics card. We're getting close. SATA ports, M.2 for hard drives. Here we go, it's looking more promising. CPU fan. And there we go, front panel connector. So you can see JFP1 and JFP2 there. You can also see pin 1, 2 marked there, and then 9, 10 at the end, which means it goes 1, 2, and the bottom on 3, 4, bottom on 5, 6, 7, 8. So it just goes like a zigzag. And that's the pin numbers. Same for the other side. And then if we refer back to the manual to double check, you can see the paper the right way up. This is basically showing you the board as we looked at it straight down. So you can sort of look at this picture and simply connect. So the first one we do would be connected to the bottom left, which is the hard drive LED. So you'd take your cables and you'd find there's the power switch, there's the reset switch, so there's the hard drive LED. And you can see the pos and neg. So basically the red is going to be connected to the bottom left and the white one next to it. And then the same for all the other pins, simply. And the switches, for some reason they give polarity on switches. I guess it's switches that have LEDs built into them. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if you connect them back to front, the light simply won't, you know, appear. So go ahead and install all those based on, you know, the names of these. Like power switch will be power switch there. And if they haven't got a polarity written on the cable here, then simply try it one way, and when the system boots up, if you say it's the power light doesn't come on, just flip the connection around. But for the ones that have, you know, plus and minus written on, then you know the red is plus, the white is minus. You can also usually make an educated guess that if you look at all the cables, all the ones with a polarity written on have the white written as the negative, for instance. So like the power LED white. So you could make an assumption that the white is the negative and then install them that way. So I'm just going to go ahead and install these cables down into JFP1 down here. And that's that done. So if we then take a look, you should end up with something like that, which will obviously be different based on everybody's individual motherboard, but you should get something similar to that taking up those pins. And then we'll do JFP2 next. There we go, so positive red, black negative, and then on the book, so you want it going this way around on the top. JFP2 installed. So that's all the cables connected to the case. The last thing to do is mount this hard drive to make sure it's in position. So with the power facing outwards, we're going to just slide it under here, and you should see the screw holes line up. So if you place it here, you can see the screw holes line up there and there. And with the hard drive mounted, all we now need to do is connect power to everything and we're good to go. So there's a few things power wise. If you've got a single power supply that isn't modular, then all the cables will already be coming out. Otherwise you'll have all these connectors that come with your power supply. So take the power supply again. This is probably going to be attached on yours. If you've got a modular one, then these need to plug in to the modules that we showed at the beginning of the video. So again, it's going to be hard to get in there now to show you on the camera, but it's the modules all down here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this module up. So that's that one in to the power supply. Now this needs to connect to the motherboard. So again, it's almost always in the same position, but we are looking at this connector down here. So this big block connector. So we'll go ahead and plug it into that one. And now that's on the main motherboard. And that's usually a 24 pin connector. So now we've got this main one out of the way, we'll try and tuck all the cables out of the way as we go to keep it clean. So as you can see there, we have JPWR2, which is for clearly the secondary power to the motherboard. So if we zoom out, you'll see whereabouts that is. So that's where I'm going to install this 8-pin connector. Okay, that's that connector in. Next we need to power the graphics card. So you can see here we've got power for graphics card. So we'll go and connect that. For that you need a 6-pin or 8-pin PCIe connector. So they typically come with a sort of split 6 or 8 connector, and it'll say, again, some will actually tell you, so it says PCIe. So connect this one up to the graphics card in the same process. And that's that one. And again, make sure sometimes CPUs, sometimes graphics cards have 2 power connectors, so look around, make sure there's no expected secondary connection, which on this one there isn't. And then we want to power the hard drive, so he's tucked away in here, so we don't want to forget to provide SATA power, which looks like an elongated version of the other power. So plug that into the hard drive. And then with that plugged in, I believe we have everything connected. So let's just do a sanity check. So we have the CPU which is connected to the motherboard, which is where it gets power from. We have the main 24-pin power down here, the big 24-pin. We have the auxiliary pin in here. We have the graphics card, we have the hard drive, and we have this fan plugged into sys fan at the moment, and most importantly the system CPU fan plugged into CPU fan. So that should be everything connected, and effectively this computer now built. So just get the lid and reinstall it, and then put on these finger tight screws. And we will just apply power. So we've got no monitor or anything, but just to get a feel that this thing powers up and spins, I'm just going to take this off so you can see, the boot up sequence as well of what to expect. Because remember, we used RAM in this that wasn't technically specified as supported on the processor, on the motherboard, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So the power's in. I've flicked I'm about to flick this switch to make sure it's on. So now we've got juice to the motherboard. You can see we've got a green light down there, which is a sign that the motherboard's got power. And I'm just going to press the power button on the front of the monitor here, which is this power button here. And then you can see the CPU fan spinning, and also the system fan. You can see down there we've got a blue light. And now we've got another green light down the bottom there, which says reset, which is the sort of onboard overclocking ability. And then the first boot sometimes takes a while. So you can see the CPU fans are still spinning. If there's an issue, then typically these would simply stop spinning. The whole system has turned off. But it looks like the system's running. It might still be doing its very first boot, because sometimes it takes a while. But what I'd expect is you usually get a beep that says that it's about to boot, and obviously we could just plug a HDMI cable in now to see what's going on. I guess that's it for the build up, and then the next video we'll go through powering up and installing Windows.